Israeli Defense Minister Yoav Gallant has said that Israeli forces are in control of the Gaza city center, having defeated Hamas in the northern part of the Gaza Strip. Israeli forces surrounded Gaza City's Al-Shifa hospital that the claim sits atop the underground headquarters of Hamas. Hamas, on the other hand, says that claims that more than 5,000 civilians are trapped inside the hospital grounds under constant fire from snipers and drones. Hamas also claims that 40 patients have died in recent days, including 3 premature babies whose incubators were knocked out. The Israeli army has released a video showing weapons inside Hamas's building in Gaza. In a post on social media, the Israeli army said soldiers secured the Hamas legislature and government building. The army claimed that the Hamas police headquarters and an engineering facility were used for weapons production and development. Small arms, rifles, bullets and the outer shells of precision-guided bombs appear in the Israeli military's footage. Yemen's Houthi rebels launched ballistic missiles on various Israel targets, including in the Red Sea city of Eilat. The group spokesperson said the group will not hesitate to target any Israeli ship in the Red Sea or any location that falls within their reach. Israel's military had earlier said that it used its Arrow aerial defense system to intercept a missile in the vicinity of the Red Sea after air raid sirens sounded in the southern port city of Eilat. The military said the projectile did not cross into Israeli territory and did not say who fired it. The Houthis have launched several missiles and drone attacks against Israel since October the 7th. The White House has said its independent intelligence supports Israel's claims that Hamas is using Gaza's hospitals to hide command posts and hostages. National Security Council spokesperson John Kirby said the U.S. intelligence came from a variety of methods, but that he could not be specific about the evidence. Hamas said on Telegram that it rejected U.S. claims about its use of hospitals. The Al-Shifa hospital has become a focal point in the Israel-Hamas war. Its grounds have become a refuge for thousands of displaced people. Hundreds of protesters held demonstrations ahead of the arrival of U.S. President Joe Biden and Chinese President Xi Jinping in San Francisco. Leaders made their way out of the airport after landing. Hundreds of onlookers gathered on the leaders' motorcade route, some holding signs that read "End CCP." Others held the Taiwanese and Tibetan flags. Some waved huge Chinese flags. Dozens of pro-China and a few anti-China demonstrators also gathered near the venue where many APEC meetings are being held. The police lined up vehicles blocking the view of the demonstrators. Israel's Foreign Minister Eli Cohen has called the United Nations Secretary General Antonio Guterres unfit to head the global body. Cohen said that Guterres had not done enough to condemn militant group Hamas and was too close to Iran. Cohen was speaking at a press conference in Geneva where he is meeting with the World Health Organization and the International Committee of the Red Cross alongside families of Israeli hostages. Guterres has previously said that there was something wrong with Israel's military operation that has killed thousands so far in retaliation for attacks by Hamas. The UN chief has called for immediate truce in Gaza in the name of humanity. Tens of thousands of protesters gathered in Washington for a march to show solidarity with Israel in its war with Hamas and condemn rising anti-Semitism. Streets were closed around much of downtown amid heightened security as people gathered in bright sunshine on the National Mall, many draped in Israeli and US flags. The march was arranged by the Jewish Federations of North America and the Conference of Presidents of major American Jewish organizations. Artists, students and relatives of some of the hundreds of hostages held by Hamas spoke at the rally.
With our voices, our votes.
Today, US President Joe Biden will meet his Chinese counterpart Xi Jinping at the APEC summit in San Francisco. This is Xi Jinping's first US visit in 6 years. The meet comes at the backdrop of the Israel-Hamas war that has been raging in West Asia for more than a month. Leaders from the 21-member Asia-Pacific Economic Cooperation Group will gather in San Francisco to talk about how to better spur trade and economic growth across the Pacific region. US President Joe Biden has said he will stress on the resumption of normal communications with China during talks with Chinese President Xi. This week itself, speaking to reporters at the White House, Biden said he's trying to alter the US relationship with China for the better after a period of strained ties. Biden expressed that the United States does not want to decouple from China but wants to change the economic relationship for the better. Beijing severed military-to-military contacts with Washington after then House of Representatives Speaker Nancy Pelosi visited Taiwan back in August last year. In a historic vote, the House of Representatives passed a temporary spending bill with broad bipartisan support to avert a looming government shutdown. The bipartisan effort garnered a 336 to 95 votes, signaling a crucial step in preventing disruptions to federal agencies as current funding approaches its expiration at midnight on Friday. This legislation, spearheaded by House Speaker Mike Johnson in his first consequential vote since assuming office less than 3 weeks ago, extends government funding through mid-January. The 336 to 95 vote reflects broad support, with 209 Democratic and 127 Republican votes in favor. Notably, 93 Republicans and 2 Democrats voted against the bill. Now, attention turns to the Senate, where Democratic and Republican leaders have expressed support for the bill. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky has said that greater loss inflicted on Russian forces near the shattered town of Avdiivka would worsen Moscow's overall position in the war. Zelensky said that the more Russian forces are destroyed near Avdiivka, the worse the overall situation will be for the enemy. The Ukrainian president also added that Russian forces were losing men and equipment faster around Avdiivka than they did during months of battle near Bakhmut to the northwest. North Korean state media has reported that the country had successfully conducted static tests of new type high-thrust solid fuel engines for intermediate-range ballistic missiles. The Korean Central News Agency reported that the tests were conducted on November 11th and 14th on a new type of high-thrust solid fuel engine. The tests were for a first and second stage of a missile. The news agency claimed the tests are essential for enhancing the strategic offensive capabilities of the military in the light of the grave and unstable security facing the country. Pyongyang also announced on Wednesday a Russian delegation led by Natural Resources Minister Alexander Kozlov is now visiting Pyongyang. Ballot counting is underway in Liberia in a runoff election between President George Weah and former Vice President Joseph Boakai in what is expected to be a closely fought vote. Former soccer star Weah came to power in 2018 after beating Boakai with just 7,000 votes. However, Weah failed to reach the 50% mark needed to secure an outright victory in October. The turnout appeared lighter compared to the first round of voting. Several polls closed on time without people still queuing to cast ballots, which was a common sight in October. A regional meeting of defense ministers from the Association of Southeast Asian Nations kicked off in Jakarta today. The ongoing conflict in Myanmar and Israel-Hamas war took center stage in discussions. Indonesia's defense minister urged ASEAN members to find a durable solution to the crisis. Meanwhile, the Malaysian defense minister called for a ceasefire in Gaza. In other news, Bangladeshi garment factories reopened after wage hike protests. Hundreds of thousands of Bangladeshi garment workers resumed their work as scores of factories reopened after 150 factories shuttered. The factory shut down after violent protests demanding a minimum wage hike. A government-appointed panel raised the sector's wage by 56.25, but garment workers have rejected the hike. Japan held exercises to prepare its air, sea and land forces for a potential conflict in East Asia. Japanese troops were observed by their Okinawa-based counterparts from the United States Marine Corps during the drill. The drills also include an air defense exercise in Japan's north and simulated attacks on 5 nuclear reactors, including the Fukushima plant. Australian police arrested 28 people in an operation against one of the most powerful criminal networks in the country's history. The year-long investigation in New South Wales involved more than 450 police officers. The syndicate originated from Lebanon and is alleged to be linked to the movement of over $648.9 million through firearms, drugs, tobacco and money laundering offences. Police have seized 2 tons of prohibited drugs and precursor drugs along with 25 firearms. Nearly $3.5 million in cash and cryptocurrency, $3 million worth of luxury watches and a Lamborghini. At least 3 people died and 18 others were left injured after a bus transporting students was involved in a fiery 5-vehicle crash in Ohio. The tragic incident involved a semi-truck that collided with a charter bus, leaving a scene of destruction and prompting an immediate response from emergency services. The accident occurred as a charter bus transporting students from a school in eastern Ohio was struck from behind by the truck. Authorities are investigating the circumstances surrounding the crash. Ghanaian President Nana Akufo-Addo has now said that the financial compensations are long overdue to Africans and the diaspora for the enslavement of people of African descent. Addo's comments come on the first day of a conference on how to address historical injustice. The event is expected to produce an African-led action plan for reparatory justice, establish an African committee of experts to oversee the plan's implementation and boost collaboration with the broader diaspora. In September, a UN report said countries could consider making financial payments among other forms of compensation. New Delhi continues to be shrouded in a thick layer of toxic smog as air quality remains in the hazardous category. The Indian capital again topped a real-time list of the world's most polluted cities. Air quality in northern India deteriorates every year ahead of winter when cold air traps pollutants from vehicles, industry, construction, dust and agricultural waste burning. The ancient Vietnamese city of Hue submerged in water after heavy rain flooded thousands of homes and blocked highways. Residents navigated flooded streets in boats while homes and cars were partially submerged. More than 2,000 people have evacuated their homes in central Quang Tri province. 3 people are currently missing. US President Joe Biden has announced that more than $6 billion in federal funding to strengthen climate resilience efforts across the nation. This includes a broad range of initiatives aimed at boosting infrastructure to withstand the impact of climate change. The investment aims to protect more than 21 million acres of public land and waterways by reducing environmental pollution. The plan aligns with Biden's target goal of cutting carbon emissions in half by 2030. The funding announcement took place as Biden was on his way to attend the APEC gathering in San Francisco, where he will deliver remarks on his administration's efforts to address the climate crisis. In other news, surgeons in New York have performed the world's first ever whole eye transplant in a human, an accomplishment being hailed as a breakthrough even though the patient has not regained sight in the eye. According to the surgical team at NYU Langone Health, in the 6 months since the surgery, performed during a partial face transplant. The grafted eye has shown significant signs of health, including well-functioning blood vessels and promising-looking retina. Until now, doctors have only been able to transplant the cornea, the clear front layer of the eye. The transplant surgery reportedly took 20 hours. London's Royal Botanical Garden debuted its annual Christmas lights shown in preparation for the festive season. Displays include high illuminated flowers, cascading lights suspended from the tree canopy, and one of the longest light tunnels to ever feature at Christmas. The Christmas lights show will now run from November 15th till January the 7th. China's economic prowess propels oil prices, with factory output and retail sales surpassing expectations. The International Energy Agency follows suit, raising its oil demand growth forecast for the year, fueled by robust consumption in China. Despite concerns of slower global economic growth, the IEA remains optimistic. Meanwhile, a weakened US dollar amid expectations of potential Federal Reserve rate cuts adds momentum to oil markets. Eyes turn to the U.S. Energy Information Administration, set to release its eagerly awaited oil inventory report after a 2-week hiatus. European firms are urgently seeking clarity from China. The European Chamber of Commerce in China stresses the need for precise definitions of important data and personal information in cross-border data transfer rules. With President Xi Jinping's focus on national security, the lack of specificity in law poses operational challenges. Concerns rise as foreign investors experience corporate raids, contributing to an atmosphere of uncertainty. China's consideration to waive data export security assessments for certain activities is welcomed but awaits implementation. Japan's economic engine hit a roadblock in the third quarter, contracting by 2.1%, starkly contrasting the 4.5% growth in the previous quarter. Soft consumption and sluggish export took center stage, denting hopes for a post-pandemic resurgence. Domestic activity failed to rebound, with consumption remaining flat and a capital expenditure disappointing. This downturn complicates the central bank's plan to phase out monetary stimulus amid rising inflation. Policymakers now grapple with the challenge of balancing economic recovery against external demand uncertainties.